What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C4, and today, continuing with Draft Central here on Beast Mode TV. Let me adjust my mic here a little bit. We will be taking a look at the defensive line, so the top 5 defensive tackles and the top 5 defensive end / edge rushers. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tough because what classifies an edge rusher, defensive end, 3-4 outside linebacker? So this is the one thing where I say, give me a little bit of slack if I misclassified a defensive end, edge rusher, and an outside linebacker, which will be the next video. I mean, it's really based on teams fit. Like, some guys might be a 3-4 defensive end, some guys might be a 4-3 defensive end. Just decides on what the coach really thinks about it. So I'm trying my best to classify these guys. So please, for the love of God, I'm sensitive here, guys. Just give me some slack. Anyways, let's try to hit, I don't know, 100 likes on this video as I break down the top 10 defensive linemen for this upcoming draft, so you can get excited for all you teams out there with weak-ass front sevens to get some playmakers. So we will start with defensive tackles, and at number 5, we got Caleb Brantley from the University of Florida, 6'2", 297 pounds. On the year, he had 31 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. Very big presence on Florida, especially a defense that struggled to stay healthy throughout this year. I saw a pro comparison for him. Some of these guys, most of them, I come up with my own pro comparisons, but if they had one on one of the draft sites I was looking at, well, I was kind of making my list and seeing, who agreed with my personal rankings. If they had one, I'll talk about that ranking, or that comparison, sorry, and see if it fits. So I saw one for Caleb Brantley. It was Jonathan Babineau of the Atlanta Falcons, longtime tenured player, has been there for what, almost a decade, maybe even over a decade. Very solid, very consistent. Usually good for about 4 or 5 sacks. And I think that's pretty fair comparison. I mean, I'm not super up on my Jonathan Babineau tape, but I do know, who he is, and I've seen a couple of his games. There's been a very long time presence there for the Atlanta Falcons. So I think that is a fair pro comparison for Caleb Brantley. Going to number 4 is going to be Chris Wormley from the University of Michigan, 6'5", 303 pounds. On the year, he had 40 tackles, 6 sacks. A big part of that very, very good Michigan Wolverine defense. My pro comparison from him, I think he's a less explosive K1 Short coming out of Purdue. Now, K1 Short was a pretty highly regarded prospect. I think he was a 1st or 2nd round pick, but he really didn't start to get, I don't know how to. He literally was a prospect. The definition of a prospect is a guy that you can get, young guy, eventually mold in to be better. Like, he is a lot better at Carolina than he was in college, which is not the case for some people. Some people, obviously, they peak in college and they just start to go downhill once they make the pros. So he looks like a K1 Short while he was at Purdue. Big motherfucker, can get involved in the run. Not a complete liability in the run, and is very influential against the pass. 6 sacks for a guy like that big. Very, very nice. I think he could play a little 4-3 defensive end, but I think he is best suited to be a 4-3 defensive tackle. Going to number 3 is going to be Malik McDowell from Michigan State, 6'5", 275 pounds. On the year, he had 34 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. My pro comparison from him is a Carlos Dunlap from Florida. Just in terms of play style, not really the stats. I think he's lanky. He has great size. He's probably best suited to be a 3-4 defensive end. I don't think, I mean, you could use him as a 4-3 defensive tackle, but I think he's best suited. He's just really disruptive. His stats are definitely not replicative of what Carlos Dunlap did at Florida. I mean, what Carlos Dunlap did at Florida was, Jesus Christ, he's some of the best defensive end numbers that I've ever seen. But, ever seen for a Gator, that is. But I think in terms of play style, it's very, very close to what you get with Malik McDowell. And Carlos Dunlap has been doing his thing for 4 or 5 years now with the Cincinnati Bengals. Good for about 10 sacks, 8-10 sacks a year for sure. I can see a very similar path for Malik McDowell. So that's why I put him here at number 3. Moving on to numero 2 is going to be Solomon Thomas from Stanford. This guy here could be the one-year wonder, but he looks like a freak. Look at his tape, fucking freak. 6'2", 275 pounds. On the season, he had 62 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, and 8 sacks for Stanford. What was a pretty disappointing season, I would say, overall for the Stanford Cardinal. And I saw a pro comparison for him, I think it was on CBS Sports, of Aaron Donald, and I don't see that. I disagree with that one there. I think more Solomon Thomas. It's really tough for me to actually gauge what he looks like. The way that he plays and his explosiveness, it reminds me kind of Khalil Mack at Buffalo. They're they're different sizes. Obviously, Khalil Mack's not as big. But if I had to say what guy kind of looks the same in terms of just jumping off the screen, that film looks like someone. It looks a little bit like Khalil Mack, more so than Aaron Donald for me. But obviously they're very different players, Solomon Thomas and Khalil Mack. But if I had to give one, I'd say there you go. Just to overhype him a little bit. If your team drafts, you can say, "Oh man, C4 said we got the next Khalil Mack." But Solomon Thomas, he's hard. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of tape on this guy. He just had one really big-time year, which was incredible, and he looked absolutely fucking unstoppable against some of the Pac-12 teams. But a little risky for me. But who is not risky is my number one defensive tackle, classifies defensive tackle. He can play anywhere. That is Jonathan Allen from the University of Alabama, 6'3", 295 pounds. On the season, he had 62 tackles, 10.5 sacks. I couldn't actually find his tackle for loss number. But here's a guy that I will compare to Aaron Donald. I mean, Jonathan Allen may be the best defensive tackle to ever, defensive lineman in general, to come out of Alabama. There's a hot take for you right there. Incredible, man. This guy was simply unstoppable. And for my money, right now, I will say he is the number one prospect. If I had to rank guys 1 to 10, regardless of position, regardless of anything, who is the most talented player, I'm going with Jonathan Allen all day long. It's not even close. There's a bunch of good players. But I think for me and my rankings, I don't think there's anyone, regardless of if they have a crazy combine or not, that will be able to bump Jonathan Allen. He is everything you want. Stop the run, got it. Athletic, got it. Fucking fill some gaps, got it. Sack the fucking quarterback, got it. Quarterback pressures, got it. I wouldn't be surprised if this motherfucker can drop back into coverage and cover some linebackers and cover some tight ends or something like that. So Jonathan Allen for me looks like Aaron Donald, even very similar to what Aaron Donald looked like coming out of Pitt. And now you've heard me rant and rave on this channel when I said I couldn't believe Aaron Donald was projected to be a late first rounder the draft he came out. You look at his stats from the University of Pitt, I would say almost breathtaking. I've never seen stats like that on a defensive lineman. But, where Jonathan Allen didn't have the similar stats as Aaron Donald, I think he's had just as much of an impact and has just as much fucking upside to be an all-pro player. So that's why he is my undisputed number one defensive tackle. Now moving to the defensive end / edge rushers. Number 5, I have Takarist McKinley. Probably butchered that name. Everything that I've seen, I didn't watch a whole lot of UCLA games, but I've just kind of looked at his tape. And everyone, I did say McKinley. I couldn't find someone saying his first name. From UCLA, he's 6'2", 265 pounds. Very similar to a Solomon Thomas. What is with these one-year wonders coming out of the Pac-12? Had just one really big, gigantic year here. He's 6'2", 265 pounds. Had 61 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, and 10 sacks. A pro comparison that I saw for him was Whitney Merciless of the Houston Texans. I could see that. I think McKinley's the kind of guy that may not be an every down starter right away. He's probably going to be a first, second round pick. I've seen some mocks have him in the first round. I don't think he's quite ready for that. I think he's going to need at least a full off season and maybe just have him come in special pass rush situations, which is somewhat similar to Merciless. Merciless didn't start off so hot his rookie year, and then eventually he became into a guy, just another incredible pass rusher on that Houston Texans defense. So I think that is a fair comparison. But McKinley, incredible athlete. I wouldn't be surprised to see him put up some freaky numbers at the NFL Combine. Number 4, we're going with Taco Charlton from Michigan, 6'5", 270 pounds. On the year, he had 43 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, and 9.5 sacks. Now, I saw a pro comparison of Justin Tuck for him. I mean, that's kind of tough for him to make because Justin Tuck hasn't played, Jesus Christ, 2-3 years? Probably 2 years now. That hasn't been really good. I mean, we can just probably forget about his time in Oakland. Trying to think back to the Giants. I could see that. Taco Charlton looks very, very good. And, I think I like him more as a prospect than I do Chris Wormley, who we talked about defensive tackles. These guys here were very influential and a big reason why Michigan's defense was carrying them to so many wins these last 2 years. And I think, plus, not Taco. Who doesn't want a guy on their team whose first name is fucking Taco? I know it's probably not his real name, but I think he's going to go by that, which is fucking crazy. So, someone else's words, not mine. They compared him to Justin Tuck, and if that's truly how they feel on that evaluation, that is very high praise for a guy that, Justin Tuck, I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but in terms of Giant fans, a lot of respect there for him. Going to number 3, this is, like I said, this is like the order that I think they're going to get drafted. This is the order I grade their talent. A lot of off-field issues here. Number 3 is Tim Williams from Alabama, 6'3", 255 pounds. On the year, 31 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks. The pro comparison that I saw for him was Bruce Irvin, and I think that's very fair. I think Tim Williams is even going to attend the Combine. I assume he will. We'll put up some very good numbers, and everyone, Bruce Irvin was like the Combine warrior the year he was coming through the draft. But Tim Williams has had multiple repeat offenses off the field. What was it? Someone made like a chicken joke or something like that. He had like a fake A-list. He got pulled over a bunch of times, drugs, all that shit. So I'd be very worrisome about Tim Williams. I could see him slipping to like the second or third round depending on how his pre-draft interviews go. And there's some guys that you can overlook it. Like I personally think a guy like Joe Mixon for what he did was absolutely horrible. But where it's only one real instance, I think, people could just say that's a momentary lapse of judgment. But when it's over and over and over again, that truly will hurt your draft stock, I believe. And I could see him being similar to a guy like Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, where even though he's incredibly talented, still slipped to the 3rd round. I think the same thing may be in store for Tim Williams. But if someone drafts him and he sorts his shit around, they got an excellent edge rusher / defensive end / you can play anything, outside linebacker. Jack of all trades. Going to number 2 is going to be Derek Barnett from Tennessee, 6'3", 270 pounds on the year. He had 56 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, and beat the greatest player in the history of football, Reggie White's sack record at Tennessee. My pro comparison from him, I see a lot of Cliff Averill, who's been doing his thing for, probably in year 8, year 9, year 10 of his career for the Detroit Lions and then the Seattle Seahawks. Perennial guy that can get 10 sacks. I think a little bit under the radar, which just completely summarizes how Derek Barnett is kind of viewed. For a guy that has, the kind of stats and background and pedigree that he has, you don't hear a lot of people talk about him. It seems like he's one of the more forgotten names in the 1st round draft discussion. But he's definitely a legit talent. I think a good combine could certainly help his stock here a little bit, but definitely will probably be a top 20 pick and really talented edge rusher defensive end. But the number 1 defensive end is pretty much undisputed. He's almost, he's definitely, I would say, top 5 prospect across the board, no matter who you're looking for. Myles Garrett from Texas A&M, 6'5", 270 pounds, 33 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, and 8.5 sacks on the year. My pro comparison for him is Mario Williams. Now, Mario Williams, coming out of North Carolina State, he's a little bit bigger. He was 6'7", a little bit more length. But in terms of athletic ability, in terms of instincts, motor, drive, determination, work ethic, straight up everything, it literally looks like a carbon copy of Mario Williams. And that was really the first draft that I started to get involved in, fucking scouting. That's pretty cool, because everyone said, oh my god, the Houston Texans, they have to go Reggie Bush. He's a once-in-a-lifetime running back. And then they went Mario Williams. Everyone gave them a bunch of shit, and look who had the better career. I think it's pretty much, unanimous that Mario Williams was the much better player out of him and Reggie Bush. And I think Myles Garrett is definitely that. I think he is, there's no way he's going to suck. It's only going to be, is he going to be a great, or is he just going to be a very good player? And I think if that's the kind of classification and grade and synopsis you get scouting Myles Garrett, I think any team's going to be happy to get him. And I think he probably will go 1st overall. I think Cleveland Browns. I'm going to eventually come out with my 1st round mock draft for every team. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go yet. Don't want to leave any spoilers out. But I've seen a bunch of mock drafts having the Cleveland Browns selecting him 1st overall. Would not be surprised with that. He's a great player and would be a good fit for that defense. And a pretty much marketable star you could consider. So we will finish here with the kind of awards, if you will. So for the most NFL ready, I'm giving that to Jon Allen. I think he's going to be incredible. He would have been like a top 15 pick last year. I think he's unanimous top 5 pick this year. The bust is going to be Tim Williams. Again, another obvious situation there. For biggest potential, I think it would be Solomon Thomas. He did declare while the going was hot. He's a redshirt sophomore, so he might, he's one of those guys, he might still grow a little bit. He might be able to make him 290 and just an absolute ripped freak. I think he just has the most untapped potential, and just from the very small scope that we have on him playing at Stanford. And for sleepers, I got DeMarcus Walker from Florida State and Devon Goodshaw from LSU. I think both these guys, DeMarcus Walker, very good career at Florida State. I think I don't know why he's being mocked to 3rd round grade on him. I think he is very talented. And Goodshaw, or Godshaw, I don't know how to fucking pronounce his name. But looking at his tape, very young. I think he's gonna be a kind of guy that you bring in and develop at a very high ceiling. I'm really surprised that he declared. I think another year at LSU would have benefited him a little bit more. But both those guys will be my official sleepers for the defensive line. So there you go, guys. If you agree or disagree with any of my rankings, let me know in the comment section below. Let's engage in a conversation. As always, maybe 100 likes on the video would be cool as shit. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be lots more draft videos and times of connected franchise modes, other shit. Legendary college rosters are still happening. All that good stuff. So that will do it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. And until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace out.